Total War players getting, well, what they have been getting for years now. Total disappointment and heartbreak.
I'm glad you've joined me today because we actually got to have a great chat about Total War. The most recent DLC has dropped, but this is not really just talking about a DLC. The overall context here is extremely important. So, Creative Assembly's relationship with their players essentially totally plummeted. And this is from a few...
It has been plummeting for years now, baby.
Different things. Number one, there was shrinkflation with DLC. If you've heard about Shadows of Change, basically, it was less stuff for more money, a big mistake. Total War...
The way it should be, if you're a Total War player, that is.
Pharaoh was essentially a glorified expansion to Troy that was sold to us as a full-fat, like actual big historical Total War game, which it transparently wasn't. There was then Hyenas, which was a extraction shooter that they were doing with their console team. That...
What the hell is this?
Was then shut down. There was a load of spicy leaks to make just for a really tasty story, frankly. And there's also the parent company Sega, who divested from Relic, which is one of their RTS studios, and had 240 layoffs, mostly at Creative Assembly. This all basically means there was a lot riding on today. And the reason I think why this is its own video is I took a look at the Thrones of Decay launch numbers. I saw a really large spike, and I thought, right, something is happening here. Players are coming back. I think we need to analyze what's up and have a bit of a chat about that. And if you would like to support us in doing that, well, you can go to bellular.games. Over there, we publish Loading Screen every single day. That is our newsletter. So you basically got to find out all of the news.
Very cool, Bellular.
Like of 66,608 people. That is a pretty damn healthy number. But
wow, that's a pretty decent spike. But it seems the average for the past days has been 25k-ish, so it is a spike. That is good.
When I looked at it, I thought, okay, well, this number only really makes sense in the context of other numbers. So I took a look at Shadows of Change, and man, this basically tells the entire story. Shadows of Change spiked to 34k players. So you're essentially seeing this DLC have double the spike, and that is for numerous reasons. So Shadows of Change was a weak DLC. That was
He is not showing any averages or anything. This is a really bad presentation of statistics, gotta say.
Overpriced. Everyone was talking about it almost exclusively in a bad light, but also the baseline update to the game that came along with it, it just didn't really have that much. Now, to get another data point, we can take a look at Forge of the Chaos Dwarves, which had 73.8 thousand as its launch peak. That's just a few days after the launch. Now, this is really relevant to me because this was a full new race, a new faction being added to the game.
Again, when you're showing me literally less than even a month, I don't really know what kind of information should I gauge from this. It's kind of not great. I would like to see what the hell is this. For example, is that the launch, or is it another expansion, or what exactly is going on here in context?
Game, and that is a lot of work, and it's also an extremely clear marketing beat. If you like Chaos Dwarves, there you go. You can play them now. So I think it's really no wonder that it did well. Of course, Shadows of Change was basically the same price with way less content, and I would also...
No one likes dwarves, but dwarves do have artillery, so... I mean, it's a give and take relationship. You play dwarves, but you have cannons, so yeah.
Say content that wasn't as well positioned at the player base. Definitely another part of this most recent DLC that we'll have to talk about. Then the other thing to take a look at is the launch of Mortal Empires. This is the thing that stitches all of the game maps together, and really for most people, this is the actual Total War Warhammer 3. The Chaos Realms campaign, honestly, it kind of blew. It kind of blew, and even from the leaks that happened a while ago, this includes people like directly emailing me and saying, hey, when I was working at the company, on the lower levels, we all tried to tell them that the Realms of Chaos campaign was basically going to be a miss, but they didn't really listen. A bit of a strange thing. This you could almost call the true launch of the game, and it's just shy of 200k players. So obviously this most recent DLC is not getting that kind of number, but again, that's not really a shocking thing. And to do a breakdown of the overall numbers, you can basically see that this peak is the largest that they've had since April, and April was when the Chaos Dwarves came out. So there certainly is a lot of player activity around this.
So everything so far is to be expected. Creative Assembly does bad things, pisses off their player base. Their player base is already not the largest in the universe, but it's big. It's relatively big, don't get me wrong. And people just get tired of their shit, and, because every expansion, everything they do in recent times is mostly just really, really bad, people just don't buy the new thing. Huh. Interesting. Who would have expected? Everyone.
We can say that, and that does mean that we should take a look into it. So the next thing to do was to take a look at sentiment. And you might notice this is a bit strange because it's not one thing, it's actually three things. And when you go through the three of them, what you basically find is between 90% and 92% in terms of the Steam user score. That's obviously correct as of me speaking, now. That could change, but the initial sentiment is good. Then, taking a look at the overall game, you can basically see, well, overall reviews, mixed. The most recent reviews, however, are very positive. You can see a spike of 150 positive reviews, and yes, there's a spike of negative reviews, but it is nowhere near as large. Fairly noteworthy, I think. And even before this, you can see that it's just slowly accruing.
If I did not know anything, these reviews would tell me, okay, I should probably maybe buy this if I only went by reviews.
Positive reviews and not that many negatives. And really that's because at its core, it's a pretty great game overall when you're taking like everything from the three Warhammer games together and you're stitching them into one map. It is a really strong player experience. So that shows that essentially what they have here is something that's really good. And those spikes of negativity, well, number one, this game had a really rough launch. That explains the first negativity spike. The second one is Shadows of Change. Shadows of Change was obviously more than just a DLC not being what people wanted. It basically represented the overall existential fears of that player base, and those were really quite severe. So, with that said, let's talk about what's going on then. So there are three DLCs that together are Thrones of Decay, and the way it works is you can purchase each one of them separately. It's £7.49 per pack, £19.11 for all three of them, and because it's done via Steam Bundle, that basically means that if you buy one of them, you're still
That's not even a reasonable discount if they cost $7 each.
Going to be getting the discount to complete the set. This basically then means if you do not play a faction, like if you just fundamentally do not want to play Nurgle, even though the new Nurgle character is pretty cool, if you don't want to play that, you do not have to buy it. With all of the previous DLCs, Chaos Dwarves not included, but if maybe with Shadows of Change, you just enjoyed the Changeling, right? Like the Changeling character mechanic. You couldn't just buy it. So fundamentally, I think that this is better. You are not being, you could almost say, forced into buying a bundle when you only really want one of the parts of that bundle. Now, the overall context here is honestly fascinating.
Well, yeah, that's kind of good. But again, keep in mind, if you're playing Total War games in general, at some point, as a player who has played it for a year, 2 or 3, and still enjoys it, you're gonna at some point buy every single one of these DLCs. That's kind of how it's designed. Sure, there are people who just enjoy playing a faction or two, but most people are gonna, over the years buy every single one of these bundles. So that's something to take into account.
They, Creative Assembly, were getting fundamentally worried about their unit economics, and they essentially decided we can't really grow our player base, we've got to make more revenue per user. How the hell do we do that? The initial thing that they tried to do was shrinkflation. That obviously hasn't worked. Now, overall here, the prices are still up, right? So it's not like this is some sort of humongous price-cutting fire sale. However, while the prices overall are up, you can spend less money to get only what you want, and the overall positioning and content of this DLC is substantially just more aligned, I think, with player interests as compared to the previous one. So let's get into that and just talk about what the paid content is. So for Nurgle, we've got Tamarkan, the Maggot Lord, as the new legendary hero, along with 5 new units and 3 regiments of renown. And of course, like any good DLC legendary lord, he's got his own mechanics. Essentially, if you want to go and recruit a whole bunch of mortals and kind of be doing Nurgle plus mortals big rampage, that's kind of what you're doing. I will admit, I have literally never played Nurgle. It was definitely one of the factions that didn't really get as much attention or as much love. I don't know why. Like, I think the Nurgle minis in the game are really, really cool, but I suppose it's just not really been my thing. Now, what is my thing is...
Nurgle is best Chaos God, by the way. Do not deny it.
Gunpowder and shooting. I love Napoleon Total War. And for the Empire, well, they are really targeting me particularly well. So their legendary lord is Elspeth. She is riding around on a dragon. That's all pretty cool. And the core with her is a focus on
Hell
magic,
yeah,
yes, but
mommy.
mostly gunpowder. So as somebody, of course, who really loves Napoleon Total War, in my head, Sharp and the boys from the 95th Rifles, they're just going to be fighting vampires and demons. That's pretty good for me. So there's the Gunnery School and Amethyst Armory, which are the mechanics that are going on there. And there's also a new legendary hero, 5 new units, generic lord, generic hero, and 3 regiments of renown. And even just like looking at the Marienburg like battleship thing, that just looks awesome. So as a player of this game, this is actually a really, really good example of their new DLC.
This is so hilarious. Like, look at this. Put your battleship on such small wheels that it can be flipped over. Yeah, that's good. This is not a complete glaring engineering flaw. Not that it honestly matters in the game, but, you know, just saying, kind of hilarious.
As a player of this game, this is actually a really, really good example of their new DLC strategy kind of working for me. I am interested in 2 of the factions here. I'm not really interested in Nurgle. That does mean that overall I should be able to spend a bit less money. Or at the very least, if I decide to go and purchase, Elspeth, which, being real with you, I probably will, because I actually do love the Total
Dude, I mean...
War.
Would you not? If you had the chance, I mean, would you not?
I really like the Total War Warhammer games. I'm more of a historical nut, but maybe that just explains why I want to go around with gunpowder. But this is a good example. I can go in, get an experience that I want for, a smaller amount of money, and if I then feel, okay, I've played enough Warhammer, I'm going to just leave this game for a while, I could come back and purchase dwarves, but I'm not kind of locked into having bought everything. I think that's just really, really good. To move on to the dwarves then, right.
Okay, I don't know the numbers, but effectively it works like this. If there's 3 items, you can get them in a bundle. That means if you're buying 2 items and you're not buying the bundle, effectively at this point you have kind of shafted yourself, because it already feels extremely uneconomically viable to not buy the bundle instantaneously, because the discount.
Focus on artillery and slayers. The slayers are basically dwarves who are mad lads who have replaced their armor with testosterone therapy. They're very roided up and pretty cool looking. Their legendary lord is Malachi. You get the Thunder Barge, which operates a bit like a horde. So, I remember playing a little bit of Vampire Coasts back in Warhammer 2. What you basically have is like the Thunder Barge as a... almost you could sort of describe it as like a movable settlement with its own like upgrades, recruitment, and things like that, and it can even be present in battle. So he can do that, gives him a lot of mobility in the campaign map, which then also pairs quite well with the adventures mechanic thematically, where you're basically just going in quests for upgrades and gear. It looks really fun, and it's got 5 new units, a generic lord, generic hero, and 3 regiments of renown. But there's also the free content, right? The free LC, so this is all coming along with patch 5.0, which is a lot better than the patch that came with Shadows of Change, which maybe could be a part of why the player numbers have been pretty good this time. There's a rework to Karl Franz, there's a rework to Balthazar Gelt, who will be starting off in Cathay, there's a Nurgle faction rework as well. They're changing up things like the plague system and the economy. The dwarves are getting a bit of a rework, I think.
More plague does sound appealing to a very, very high degree, not gonna lie, boys.
Specifically some of the grudge system. There's the Nemesis Crown, which I was watching a Great Book of Grudges video about the overall DLC. He described it as being similar to the Sword of Cain. the one that you'd be getting if you're an elf in like Warhammer 2. A little bit like that. And then there's a legendary lord, Epidemius, who I almost pronounced as Epidermis, who will be the Nurgle, a Nurgle character, and he's essentially just got to focus on spreading plague everywhere. Only is available in Immortal Empires, which does make a lot of sense because Realms of Chaos, I would love to see individual player numbers for that, but he is a free legendary lord, so just everyone can go and play that. So, to me, that is all looking quite interesting. It's targeting like very core factions like Empire and Dwarves, those probably in like my top tier list of things that I'm naturally interested to play. So I definitely feel like this is well positioned to me as a player of this game.
I don't understand this. I do not understand Creative Assembly. I mean, yeah, they're trying to milk, they're trying to get more money out of their already existing user base because they kind of have effectively given up on trying to get in new people into playing this game, which is kind of really stupid. Warhammer 40k exploded in popularity during the last 4 years, effectively. And, I mean, why can't the same happen to the game to a degree? A lot of people, you know, strategy games are nicher, definitely, than your Fortnite or whatever, but you still can get people in it. You just need to, you know, make cool TikToks and shit. I don't know, but Creative Assembly has not even remotely tried, like, even 1/10 of the stuff that they could try to get actually people into the game. One of these things would probably be actually an extensive library of explanations of what's happening in the game. You know, why X matters, what does this do, blah blah blah, like some beginner strategies or some shit. Because Total War is a pretty hard game for a lot of people. Okay, and a big chunk of players don't want to play on very easy because we're players, not game journalists. Sure, there are people who play Total War at very easy, and that's not even a bad thing, by the way. Play it how you like, but Total War is relatively hard, and the struggle with playing on easy difficulties in Warhammer, as much as I understand, has always been extremely simple. It's the fact that taking the auto resolve is just way too appealing because it doesn't lose too much, blah blah blah. But at some point, it does lose too much, and then, well, the players don't have experience of actually fighting battles, and then they are forced to manually fight a harder battle, and they don't know how to do it, and then they lose, and the campaign's pretty much over. That's how it works in a lot of situations, as much as I understand. So, Warhammer, all of these strategy games are not that niche. They just need way better explanations, guides, and things like that, you know, and explanations what actually works against what. Because also, Warhammer is very particular in the idea that, well, you have this unit, it's big, it's clunky, and it's supposed to be anti-infantry, right? Against small units. But turns out it's absolutely shit against small units because its attack animation and whatnot is complete ass. So what do you even do? Don't know. And that's kind of bad. You can't even trust the things that are actually written on the tin. So that's something that kind of ruins it for a lot of players, and yeah. Again, I think there's so much potential for Total War games because I feel the player base is not tapped out even remotely. It could easily double if there was just enough effort in doubling it. It's like Destiny 2 and Bungie's absolute stupidity of making the new player experience like, you know, when it's the new player experience for Destiny 2, by the way, if you do not know, it's like this. Bungie is literally trying to make you delete the game. It is horrid, it is bad, it explains nothing, you're lost 99% of the time on whatever you're doing if someone's not guiding you what's important and what you should be doing. And Warhammer, to a degree, is kind of similar-ish.
Like, ultimately, Creative Assembly's challenge here is, can they reactivate their lapsed players? I can say that as a lapsed player, the positioning of the content in this DLC, combined with the entry point for me being, £7 something, that is really working very, very damn well. But we got to talk about the out-of-game context. So obviously, Creative Assembly were hit by layoffs. I believe per Legend, he was saying like about 160. Our understanding is that it was mostly from Creative Assembly's UK offices, with Sofia being less impacted, which obviously makes a lot of sense. It is going to be cheaper to do things in Sofia than it is in England. And of course, that's in addition to the entire Hyenas team being chopped. There's then the future of Total War. And again, like, I've been playing this franchise since Rome 1. It and World of Warcraft have been two constants in my gaming life. So if you've ever been, a bit confused, like, why does he talk so much about, like, Total War on a variety channel? It's close to me, what can I say? Now, the leaks are kind of interesting here, and they do have to be taken with a grain of salt. And so Legend has got interesting leaks. First up, Total War 40k is in the works. He had then heard that the next Total War game...
Ooh, when Total War 40k comes out, that's going to be big. That is actually something I may even want to play. Because, I mean, Warhammer is not 40k. 40k is different than that. One is a fantasy, medieval, blah, 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 with the God Emperor equivalent. The other one is the God Emperor. So, there is difference. Total War is not exactly tapping that hugely into the Warhammer 40k base. And that base is big, so it could be happening finally. Could be happening. Who knows? Anyway, that was Belly Alert News. This was Quizzer Said Sin. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.